Hi, and welcome to the Week 4 overview and preface into Week 5. Just to let you know, the midterm will be proctored and the midterm will be opening up on February 7th. So if you want to go ahead and take a look at the study guide under class discussions, the class discussions area under week 6 actually has a study guide. During that week, and it is open from February 7th through the 14th, midnight to midnight, it is open book and open hard copy notes. So you can bring in paper and you can bring in your book. There will not be any readings during that time. So really use it as a time to prepare and to get yourself comfortable with the work that you need to do. Week 5 is going to be building on what we did with poetry in week 4, but it focuses specifically on short fiction. So if you take a look under learning modules and then of course look under unit 5, you will see that there's a overview of the readings that you're going to be doing, which mainly are Sherwood Anderson, Catherine Porter, Ernest Hemingway, and F. Scott Fitzgerald. There are some poets that you're going to be exploring. They're fairly short readings. They're more in a way to prepare you for the midterm. The discussion notes talks a lot about Fitzgerald, so getting a good firm grip there, as well as talking a bit about all of the authors. There's a little overview, the podcast on plot, which should help you as you start to unpack some of these modern pieces of literature. In relation to the work that you're doing in week 4, I saw a great amount of exploration, which is what we should be doing. Ultimately, in this class, it's not about trying to be like, aha, I found the answer or I found the solution, but instead it's about finding out the exploration, the inquiry. And many of you explored that. From Ernest Brooks' exploration about In a Station of a Metro, this notion of the crowd looking at its wet petals, to the exploration from Wade about modernism being kind of this intellectual pursuit, which often can be very true. I also appreciate the overview from Whitney that this is also in relation to the wars. Often we look at bookends, World War I and World War II, as kind of blocking modernism. And in fact, Virginia Woolf said on or about December 10th, 1911, that the character of the world changed and that this was the modern period. Um, I still, Henrietta, if you could still please post your actual responses. This time I had a problem opening it. I was not able to open your attachment. So I'm not sure what's going on. I know that other students have had problems in the past. So could you please just post it in there for us? I'd appreciate that. Excellent overview from David Fleshman this time. I mentioning how you don't know how this In a Station of the Metro became famous, but that is true. Um, it is a little bit odd when we think about how these basic words could become, I guess you'd say, emblematic of a period. And many of you wrestled with the wasteland, and kind of exploring the notion that, as Brian mentioned, that it is one of the most important poems. Many of you were frustrated, but that kind of exploration was difficult. Danny mentioned, that I tried to help with this podcast for metaphors. But the notion of dark shadows kind of came up that this just did not work. Poetry is hard. They're very difficult to get through. Sometimes it's because in many ways, when we think about poetry, we have very few words. So a lot of it's like the rhetorical strategy of parataxis, where it's the iceberg theory, so that a lot of the information is contained on that word, but a lot of the meaning is underneath. Patrick mentioned that too. This notion of kind of this English language being the key, but that the poetry often is very confusing. Excellent posting though, Patrick, as far as your overview. I really appreciate that. Delana mentioned that, the hardest week. It is hard. Poetry is super hard. Um, but it is also something that once you get into the rhythm of it, you can be very engaged. Um, in addition, I do appreciate the overview that Rashawn gave us in reference to history. The notion that this is a breaking away from the traditions of 19th century Victorian principles, and that is true. Overall, I think most of you had a good collection of resources that you were pulling together. Many of you were pulled between both the interest level of this work and also kind of the frustration you might felt at not understanding. But I saw a great amount of work moving back and forth. So in essence, like Jeffrey Schramm, who mentioned a lot about World War I and the notion of militarism and also the notion of history in referencing what we might know. And that's one of the key elements of metaphor, is that it does reference this historical perspective. I absolutely love that Scott talked about the idea that the wasteland was a cruel joke. It very well could be. It is one of the toughest poems in the canon of modern literature. And it does appear often very tense between meaning, understanding, emotion, and of course, inside jokes. Overall, though, I think you guys are doing a great job. I see a lot of good commentary coming back and forth. If you ever have any questions, comments, or concerns, you know that you can always reach out to me. I'm happy to speak with you about the works. I'm also happy being an engaged reader. It takes a bit of time to really develop those skills, and I'm happy to help you with those. As you move into week 5 and we get involved with the short fiction, I think you're going to enjoy it a bit more. It's still got that modern sense of disillusionment, anxiety, alienation, but instead of being very terse and almost, just pointed with one or two words, it really has a sense of richness and lushness, particularly in F. Scott Fitzgerald's Babylon Revisited, On the Snows of Kilimanjaro. You're going to see two different takes on the alienation felt after and between these kind of atrocities of World War I and World War II. But you're also going to see such beauty and purity of language. And that is key, is to really look for these moments of language, these rich feelings of kind of the parataxis I spoke of seeing, of course, the beauty of the words, but understanding underneath that rich meaning that really can pull. Like I said, please feel free to reach out to me. I look forward to seeing your work, and let me know.